This program is presented in the public interest by a grant from the Illinois Broadcasters Foundation, Incorporated. Information on careers in broadcasting is available at www.ilba.org. From the chambers of the Illinois House of Representatives in Springfield, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois presents the 2012 Convocation and Investiture of Laureates. Since the first Convocation and Investiture of Laureates in 1965, the Lincoln Academy of Illinois has recognized more than 300 people who have brought honor and distinction to their state in the spirit of that most famous Illinoisan, Abraham Lincoln. Each person represents a lifetime commitment to leadership and service to humanity. The Lincoln Academy of Illinois was patterned upon the learned academies of Europe and is unique among the 50 United States. Members of the nonpartisan, not-for-profit academy are appointed by the governor, who also serves as its president. The Lincoln Academy meets each fall to select the laureates who are to receive the Order of Lincoln Medallion the following spring. The Lincoln Medallion is the state's highest honor for individual achievement. Its colors of red, violet, and green represent the state bird, the cardinal, the state flower, the violet, and the state tree, the oak. The Lincoln Academy of Illinois also recognizes future leaders by honoring the outstanding senior students at each of the state's four-year degree-granting institutions of higher education, in ceremonies held each fall at the old Illinois State Capitol in Springfield.
Tonight we add 7 more names to our honor roll of laureates. One is a world-class athlete who overcame a disability of birth, breaking barriers, setting records, inspiring others around the world. Another, an international business leader, providing leadership to one of our state's preeminent business organizations. Another is a problem solver. "Houston, we have a problem," he famously declared, and then went on to lead his team to a solution. Another of this year's honorees became the first Hispanic woman president of an American public university, making her leadership of that institution a mission to higher education everywhere. 2 of our laureates are proud sons of this capital city of Springfield. One provided leadership to his family's business during a critical time in its history, leading it to national stature. The other joined the Navy at age 18, graduated from the academy, served on active duty for 35 years, becoming Deputy Chief of Naval Operations. 6 living laureates, each of them Lincoln-hearted, to quote Vachel Lindsay, Lincoln-hearted in every good way. And finally, for only the 3rd time in our history, we present the award posthumously to a 6th-generation Illinoisan who made the ultimate sacrifice. One of only 10 members of the American family and the only Illinoisan to have received the Medal of Honor during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. By paying tribute to him, we honor all of our fallen heroes. By thanking him, we thank each of them as well for a gift we can never repay. At Gettysburg, Lincoln called it a new birth of freedom.
Jean Driscoll was born with spina bifida and started using a wheelchair at the age of 15. A competitive individual, she was inspired to play sports in high school and subsequently was recruited to play basketball for the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. After excelling on the college basketball and track teams, she set her sights on a new course, a 26.2-mile course. And on Monday, April 16th, 1990, she won her first Boston Marathon. But Jean Driscoll did more than win the Boston Marathon. She conquered it. After 7 consecutive victories in Boston, followed by 3 years as runner-up, she won an unprecedented 8th title. Along the way, she won 2 Olympic silver medals, 12 Paralympic medals, and she holds the world record in the 10,000-meter track event. Through a partnership that began in 2001 with Johnny and Friends, Inc., Jean Driscoll implemented wheelchair track camps in the West African nation of Ghana. She also raised funds to bring athletes from Ghana to the United States to train with the University of Illinois wheelchair track and road racing team. 2 of these athletes became the first Ghanaians to represent their country in the Paralympics. To receive the Order of Lincoln from Champaign, Illinois, Jean Driscoll.
My parents raised me the same way they raised my brothers and my sister. The fact that I had spina bifida was a characteristic, like hair color, eye color. It wasn't a defining principle. And so I had to help with dishes, and I had to clean my room, and my Saturday job was to clean the living room and vacuum and dust. And so it was a very normal childhood. I remember going swimming at the local park.
Jean Driscoll discovered wheelchair sports in high school in her native Milwaukee.
When I arrived at the University of Illinois, I not only played wheelchair basketball, but I also got involved in the track and road racing program. I had done some recreational racing prior to coming to Illinois, and so as an undergraduate, I was a dual sport athlete.
I'll terminate the test after 5 seconds. We'll take about 3 or 4 minutes recovery, then we'll do a full 30-second.
I had these coaches who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and they wouldn't let me stay where I was. They pulled me out of my comfort zone and created a leader that I never knew existed inside of me.
Driscoll excelled at racing, but had to be sold on the idea of trying a marathon.
It took my coach, Marty Morse, my racing coach, Marty, 2 years to talk me into doing this 26.2-mile race. The only reason I did it is because he wouldn't take no for an answer.
Jean competed in her first marathon in Chicago in 1989 and qualified for the Boston Marathon.
Fought tooth and nail. I didn't want to go to Boston. I didn't want to do another marathon. The coach always wins. I went out to Boston in 1990 and ended up winning my first Boston. I've won Boston 8 times. I had the world best time on the Boston Marathon course for the women's wheelchair division from 1990 until 2011. It was broken in 2011 by 16 seconds. And certainly I've relived my races and thought about, well, where could I have picked up more time? That competitiveness never goes away.
Driscoll won 2 Olympic silver medals and 12 Paralympic medals.
There's an immense pride that goes with representing your country. Yeah, I still feel the chills of having USA on the front and the back of my uniform. I was so proud to represent the USA.
Jean Driscoll retired from competition in 2000. The following year, she began working with a partnership called Joni and Friends to start wheelchair track camps in the West African nation of Ghana. The athletes not only lacked proper equipment, some literally had to crawl into camp because they lacked wheelchairs of their own.
We had 7 somewhat antiquated racing chairs, 6 of which were functional, and there were 32 people who came to that wheelchair track camp. They all had to share the equipment. For some of those people, for 10 minutes in the morning when we did our morning workouts, and for 10 minutes in the evening when we did our evening workouts, they were up off the ground. And that has become a life mission, both literally and figuratively, to help get people up off the ground.
Today, Jean Driscoll works as an Assistant Dean of Advancement in the University of Illinois College of Applied Health Sciences.
I will always have a desire to serve and to make a difference and to invest in people's lives. It was modeled very well for me here at the university. And I don't know where life will take me, but I know it's going to continue to be exciting, and I'm anticipating those next experiences.
As you might have heard from the introduction, the University of Illinois changed my life. Actually, it still is changing my life. I went from a child who couldn't walk 1 block to school because of spina bifida to holding the world record in the marathon for 17 years. It was broken last year. Everyone should have a coach, like my coach, Marty Morse. He made training and learning fun, and it's because of him that I get to sit before you today. I've been extremely proud to represent the University of Illinois and to ride on Marty's coattails. And I'm still riding on coattails at the University of Illinois by an opportunity to work with our dean, Tanya Gallagher. I would like to dedicate this recognition to my coach, mentor, and dear, dear friend, Marty Morse, and celebrate the success everyone enjoyed because of him at the university. Thank you.
W.James Farrell, more familiarly and much preferred Jim Farrell. He served for many years as the president, chairman, and chief executive officer of Illinois Tool Works, ITW. ITW, as you know, is a multinational manufacturing corporation of highly engineered fasteners, components, assemblies, and systems. Now, as an active member of the business community, he served as a member of the board of directors for some of our most well-known companies, including 3M, Abbott, Allstate Insurance, and United Airlines. He is also the vice chairman of the Commercial Club of Chicago, one of the oldest organizations in the country, actually, representing business, professional, educational, and cultural leaders, again, focused on the Chicago region. He's also chairman of the Civic Committee, the civic arm of the Commercial Club that was formed in 1983 to bolster core industries and pursue new economic opportunities for the whole region. To receive the Order of Lincoln from Chicago, Illinois, W.James Jim Farrell.
Jim Farrell's early interest in engineering and manufacturing stemmed in part from his father's work in Buffalo, New York.
Father was a experimental assembler with Bell Aircraft, when it was Bell Aircraft owned by the Bell brothers. And of course he was able to work on the world's first jet airplane, or the United States' first jet airplane, and the first helicopter. And so I got lots of curiosities out of that, a lot of excitement over that.
Farrell earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Detroit. He began working with a subsidiary of Illinois Tool Works in 1965 and rejoined the company after 2 years in the Army.
In the late 60s, it was about $70 million in revenues. Had maybe, or decentralized company, always have been, had maybe 50 divisions at that time. Being in the mix with the engineers, the designers, was a lot of interesting fun, if you will, so that coming up with a unique solution for a unique problem that saved the customer money, obviously brought revenues to us, was a challenge that was given to everyone in the company, basically, at ITW, and I felt right into that and loved it.
Farrell was involved in nearly every aspect of ITW during 41 years with the company, from sales to general manager to company chairman in 1996. During his tenure, ITW grew into a nearly $30 billion international operation by developing what they called the 80-20 business model.
20% of your customers generally give you 80% of your revenues. 20% of your products are generally 80% of your revenues. 20% of your manufacturing equipment produces 80% of your product. So it goes on and on and on, this 80-20 look at life. So we began to develop this way of focusing in on the 20% that really counted, not necessarily ignoring the 80, but first of all making sure that if you paid attention to the 20 that really counted, you would succeed.
Farrell stressed community involvement on ITW and led by example with Junior Achievement, United Way, the Lyric Opera, Northwestern University, and Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry, where he led the museum's nearly $209 million Science Rediscovered Capital campaign.
We now have a significant educational program at the museum where we not only teach kids science and math through 5 different learning labs, but we can also graduate middle school teachers with a master's degree in science or math. And no other institution of this type in the country can do this or has done this.
Farrell is vice chairman of the Commercial Club of Chicago and chairman of its civic engagement arm, the Civic Committee.
The Commercial Club is the descendant of the Daniel Burnham plan to rebuild the city after the fire, and it still is after that same sort of mission. And half of those are Republicans, half of those are Democrat. There's every walk of life that you can think of in the Commercial Club.
The Civic Committee's current focus is finding solutions to state government's chronic fiscal problems and the public pension crisis.
In the state of Illinois at this point in time, if you want to think about growing the state, then you really have to settle the financial issue because it is so dominant that it affects everything else. Any social issue you want to talk about is affected by the financial issue. So getting the financial issue resolved and settled will go a long way to figuring out what we can do to grow the state or the city after that.
I believe the impulse to serve is something that we all share. That's certainly true of Jim Lovell, a national hero, or Jean Driscoll, who inspires so many to look beyond their disabilities. It's true of leaders like William Schnirring, Naomi Burgess Lynn, and Admiral Thunman. And of course, it was true of Staff Sergeant Robert Miller, who was given America's highest award, the Medal of Honor, incidentally originally signed into law by Abraham Lincoln. To be included in their company is very humbling and not the least a little bit embarrassing. And as Mr. Lincoln himself said, when you're embarrassed, the best thing to do is stop talking. So let me say thank you very much to the Academy. I'm truly honored.
Captain James Lovell, the renowned commander of Apollo 13, was chosen in September of 1962 for the United States Manned Space Program, following extensive experience as a naval aviator and test pilot. He was the pilot of the history-making Gemini 7 flight, which saw the first rendezvous of 2 manned spacecraft in 1965, and the commander of the Gemini 12 mission in 1966 that perfected astronaut extravehicular operations. Captain Lovell became the command module pilot and navigator for the epic 6-day journey on Apollo 8, man's maiden voyage to the moon. Captain Lovell's 4th and final flight was the perilous Apollo 13 mission in 1970. When their oxygen system failed, Lovell and his crew modified their lunar module into a lifeboat, which assured their survival in space and their safe return to Earth. Captain Lovell's education prepared him for a successful transition from the space program to the world of business. Today, he's devoted to disseminating information about the United States space program. To receive the Order of Lincoln from Lake Forest, Illinois, it is my honor to introduce Captain James Arthur Lovell, Jr.
I really enjoyed the stars and astronomy, and I became a Boy Scout when I was in Milwaukee, and one of the merit badges was astronomy.
Jim Lovell was inspired by American rocket pioneer Robert Goddard to experiment with his own homemade rockets in high school.
We made one out of a mailing tube, built the engine out of wood with a nozzle. We tried to duplicate what we had. I had some books on it. And the fuel was essentially gunpowder.
The Naval Academy graduate was an experienced test pilot by the time he was chosen for the space program in 1962. Gemini 7 was his first space flight in 1965.
Gemini 7, what we were trying to do is a long-duration flight and a rendezvous. Two things that had to be proved because a lot of medical people didn't think that the human body could be in space for 2 weeks. But it turned out that we could last in zero gravity just as well as we can in gravity.
Lovell commanded Gemini 12, which perfected the extravehicular operations needed for the Apollo program.
11, 10, 9.
As command module pilot and navigator aboard Apollo 8, Lovell and his crew became the first human beings to circle the moon.
It was part of the highlight of my career, really. Being the first 3 people to see the far side of the moon, to see the Earth as it really is. Just a small body, blue and white ball.
Clock start, flight.
Lovell's fourth and final space flight aboard Apollo 13 became the stuff of legends when an explosion crippled the command and service modules on the way to the moon.
Houston, we've had a problem.
We didn't know exactly what happened. We heard a large bang. We thought at first we lost one of our batteries. Sometimes the battery produces, an explosive gas. But it wasn't until I saw the oxygen escaping from the rear of my spacecraft and looked at the needles on my quantity gauges of oxygen that I knew that we were in deep trouble.
I want you to get some guys figuring out minimum power in the LEM to sustain life.
Lovell's crew used the mission's lunar module as a lifeboat, while NASA engineers worked overtime to find ways to bring them safely back home.
It's really a classic case of crisis management, a case where good leadership on the part of the mission control team, the teamwork involved there, along with the teamwork that we had in the spacecraft, the use of initiative, figured out how to solve a crisis like we were being poisoned by our own carbon dioxide, how to get rid of that successfully. These are the things that turned an almost certain catastrophe into a successful failure.
Odyssey, Houston, we show you on the mains. It really looks great.
Lovell knew they'd finally made it when the recovery crew spotted 3 good parachutes after re-entry.
Huge sigh of relief. I'd like to see that water over the window, and when the scuba guys came over and knocked on the window, we're very happy.
Captain Lovell left the space program in 1973 and became a successful businessman, retiring as an executive in the telecommunications industry. He continues to be a tireless booster for new space exploration programs and international cooperation.
I can remember way back in 1957 when the Russians put up Sputnik, and everybody in this country said, how could they do that? Don't we have all the technology? Aren't we the leaders in this type of technology? And here the Russians put up Sputnik. It really was a spur to the education of young people starting in 57 to 60 that kept on all through the period once we started our space program going. And now that we have sort of a good relationship with most of our countries, at least our European and the Soviet or the Russian people, and we're working together, this idea of cooperation on something that we can have disagreements with, but not things that would not lead to conflict. I mean, so it brings people closer together. And so that's why I think the program is well worth it.
I am forever grateful to participate in an endeavor that brought out the best in American science and technology. The knowledge garnered about our universe these past 50 years is a legacy we should all be proud of. And I thank you for this recognition.
Naomi Lynn, a nationally recognized educator and academic administrator. was the first Hispanic woman president of an American public university. Dr. Lynn served as president of Sangamon State University in Springfield beginning in 1991, and through its reorganization into the University of Illinois Springfield, retiring as its first chancellor in 2001. The Naomi B. Lynn Distinguished Chair for Lincoln Studies at the University of Illinois Springfield, a milestone for the university, was endowed in her honor. As a teacher, scholar, advocate, and mentor, Dr. Lynn has demonstrated the power of education and worked tirelessly to ignite in individuals of all ages an enthusiasm for learning. In classrooms as well as the Capitol building, she has made a positive impact on public service in the land of Lincoln. To receive the Order of Lincoln from Springfield, Illinois, Dr. Naomi Burgos Lynn.
As a child, Naomi Burgos Lynn grew up discussing politics with her parents in New York City, but she wasn't sure about her career goals until her first day in college.
I'm not even sure I knew that there was a political science major. I always thought I would go to law school, and then for a while I thought I would go into religious education. And when I went to college, Presbyterian College in East Tennessee, I declared a sociology major, but one day I went into a classroom. I had a political science as an elective, and the professor was so dynamic and so interesting that that very first day of class, I went immediately to the admissions office and said I want to change my major, and I've never looked back.
Lynn earned her master's degree at the University of Illinois and doctorate from the University of Kansas. She taught political science at Kansas State University and became the first woman to chair her department.
We didn't have, in political science, you didn't have many women professors. Although I went to, undergraduate major in political science, and because as we moved, I would take courses, 3 other institutions, graduate institutions at one time or another. I never had a woman political science professor in all those years. So almost everything you did, you were the first. The first woman to head a political science department at Kansas State, the first woman academic dean at Georgia State. I was, one of my big aspirations was never to be introduced as the first, because it was so common that everybody had done it.
Dr. Lynn was hired as president of Sangamon State University in Springfield in 1991, a relatively new 2-year institution with lots of problems.
I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to heal the community, because not only we had lawsuits, we had a labor unrest, the faculty was unionized at that time, as you know. It was very, very difficult, and it took some time. I decided that I needed to bring everybody together. And there's a group at Harvard who does this. They had helped settle the Nicaraguan war, so I thought it'd be a good group to bring in. And they did come in because they were outsiders, and I asked the Board of Regents to sit in on the discussions, the faculty, the union, the administration, some staff, and we spent 3 or 4 days just sitting together talking about what the issues were, how we were going to come together, how it was a new day for our campus, and I think that was the beginning of the beginning. You can ask people to trust you, but you have to earn it. And that was the beginning of an opportunity for me to learn to trust them and for them to learn to trust me. And I think out of it came a stronger college.
Now I say with deep emotion, and for the last time, I thank all of you on behalf of Sangamon State University.
During her 10 years in office, Dr. Lynn led Sangamon State University's reorganization into the University of Illinois Springfield. She welcomed its first freshman and sophomore classes and launched its first doctoral degree program.
I was very lucky because I came at a time when I was able to lead some change, and we changed the entire nature of the institution. We were started out as a 2-year, continuing community college or master's degree program, and now you look on the campus and it doesn't look the same. You see students, freshmen, and everything changed. My husband said something very interesting to me when I was thinking about debating whether I wanted to come here or not. And he said, Naomi, you can go to Stanford and you might make a marginal difference. If you go to Sangamon State, you have an opportunity to really make a difference. And I've thought of that since. He was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. Every year, I'm invited by a local group to serve on a scholarship committee for Latino students. It is both an inspiring and a heartbreaking experience. It is inspiring because I have the opportunity to read essays from bright students who are willing to make unbelievable sacrifices to get an education. It is heartbreaking because we have so little money to give and so many deserve our help and support. What answer do we give to a young woman who's in medical school, who aspires to go back and serve her community? Those of us being honored today were encouraged, inspired, and helped by others. No one made it here alone. Now it is our turn to help the new generation secure their dreams. The key is education. I commend the Lincoln Academy for having as one of its missions honoring students, the great citizens of tomorrow. Again, I thank you for this great honor.
William R. Schnirring, Bill Schnirring, a lifelong resident of Springfield, is the chairman and chief executive officer of Springfield Electric Company. With its corporate headquarters in Springfield and 16 branch offices throughout Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri, Springfield Electric is one of the largest electrical distributors in the nation. Bill Schnirring has shared his leadership and humanitarian spirit with numerous civic service and educational organizations, including service on boards of Blackburn College, American Business Club, the United Way, Contact Ministries, the Vachel Lindsay Home Association, the Dean's Business Advisory Council at the University of Illinois Champaign, and the Chancellor's Advisory Council at the University of Illinois Springfield. He has promoted conservation and recreation as a member of the Springfield Parks Foundation. Bill Schnirring served on the board of directors at Memorial Medical Center for over 30 years and as chairman in 1976. But of all Bill's many accomplishments, his greatest legacy is the business and philanthropic spirit that he has passed on to his daughters, his sons-in-law, and key employees of Springfield Electric. Bill Schnirring is truly a first citizen of Springfield and of Illinois. To receive the Order of Lincoln, I commend to you William Schnirring.
My dad was a very, very well-respected, from an ethical point of view, from a friendly point of view, from just kind of the golden rule point of view.
Bill Schnirring worked alongside his father in the family business after attending the University of Illinois and serving in the U.S. Army in the early 1950s.
He was great because he would let me do some things that I kind of wanted to do. And if they didn't work out, that was okay. If they worked out, that was even a better walk to the bank.
Schnirring credits relationships with allowing Springfield Electric Supply Company to enjoy steady growth over the past 50 years.
Mike's new with the company
42
years. I was close.
Who's counting?
42 years.
Yeah.
Wonderful guy, wonderful family. Yeah. Like many businesses, but maybe more than some, this business is a relationship business, and that relationship extends to the people from whom we buy, the people with whom we work, and the people that we service.
Schnirring has always taken an active interest in the civic life of his hometown.
I was involved Masonically, was potentate of the shrine here at age 35, which was the youngest. I've been head of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been on the State Chamber of Commerce. I've been on the advisory board of the School of Business at Illinois. I've been involved in numerous charities here and involved in the American Business Club. And I just, my wife would tell you I've been over-involved, but I love it. I really do. I like a challenge.
As a member and chairman of the Memorial Medical Center Board of Directors, Schnirring worked with Dr. Richard Moy, the founding dean of the Southern Illinois University School of Medicine, to lay the groundwork between Memorial and neighboring St. John's Hospital to launch Springfield's new medical school.
There was some resistance by the local doctors, concern about where they would stack up with this new school coming. And so there were a few bumps to get over. But I don't think any of them today would say that it hasn't been anything but a very positive experience and a real win for Springfield. There's tertiary care here today that we would never have seen.
Schnirring helped raise funds for Springfield's Hoagland Center for the Arts.
And it's more than an arts center, it's really a community center because it's used by a lot of youth groups and what have you and by other organizations. And then there's art shown down there, as you know.
The Schnirring family has set aside a 100-acre tract of land on the city's southwest side to be preserved for wildlife habitat.
There are a lot of deer out there now. There are a lot of turkey. There are coyote. There are fox. And this would be an additional, I'd like to try and get it so that we could get some birds, some game birds of quail or pheasant going as well. I saw one last year, but it'll just be some natural area that hopefully the future can enjoy.
A new concession stand in Springfield's Washington Park is one of the latest efforts by the man fondly known as Koch in giving back to the city he loves.
And I think if you're fortunate enough, and I really feel that Mary and I have been extremely fortunate, and get to the point where you have the time, the energy, and some resources that you can do that, it's really a very rewarding experience as far as I'm concerned. And I'm happy to say that I have achieved that point where I can do some of those things, and it's fun.
For over 60 years, I have had the privilege of being associated with a wonderful company. It has grown substantially in size, professionalism, reputation, and profitability. And today it is one of the leaders in this country. But that hasn't occurred because of one person. This has happened because of an amazing staff of hardworking, well-trained, highly motivated, and loyal associates. This same group provided me and allowed me the time and provided me the assistance to participate in numerous industry, civic, and charitable activities. Without that support, I wouldn't be standing before you tonight. I want to acknowledge and profusely thank an individual who has been my best friend, encouraged me, counseled me, and pretty well kept me out of trouble for 75 years. My wife, Mary. Now, she's right down here. And on behalf of all the people who have worked with me, we thank you.
Vice Admiral Ronald Thunman, former Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Submarine Warfare, grew up in Springfield. In high school, Admiral Thunman excelled in basketball and track, but his life was significantly shaped by his performance in football and his selection as a first-team All-State center. He graduated from Springfield High School in 1949 and then was appointed to the United States Naval Academy, where he earned a bachelor's degree in science. He served with distinction in the United States Navy for 35 years. His career included 12 years as an operational commander and 12 years as an admiral. In his last submarine assignment as Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Submarine Warfare, he was responsible for all submarine programs, including the Tomahawk cruise missile, the Trident submarine weapons system, the conceptual design of the Seawolf-class nuclear attack submarine. The Navy's successful search to recover the Titanic took place on his watch. After retiring from the Navy, he became president of Valley Forge Military Academy and College. To receive the Order of Lincoln from Springfield, Illinois, Vice Admiral Ronald Thunman.
Springfield High School Sports Hall of Famer Ron Thunman credits football with his interest in attending the Naval Academy.
I think it was because I liked the Army-Navy football games. That I would listen to those games in the late 40s, and they were great games. It's when Army had their big team, and Navy was really not much of anything at all, except those games were very close. I got to the Naval Academy, which was the best thing that could happen to me at that point. It was a way to go forward, and it's a way to be somebody.
Thunman served aboard a destroyer and commanded a patrol craft before moving into his choice assignment in submarines.
Their operations are unique. They're independent. The captain makes the decisions. Yes, he gets his patrol orders, training, guidance, and all before you go, and then when you go, you do what you think is right. Try to carry out your mission, but it's that independence that kind of the last of the Corsairs concept. And then, of course, the people in submarines were so extraordinary. All volunteers, all very, very bright.
Ron Thunman commanded the nuclear attack submarine, the USS Plunger, from 1968 to 1971.
That was a height of, in my view, the Cold War, 68 to 71. Lots of nose-to-nose operations with the Soviets around the world. Their submarines, their fleet ballistic missile submarines, their attack submarines, their intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance that we did all along the Soviet areas, and it was the best submarine we could design at that time.
Thunman commanded the U.S. Pacific Fleet Submarine Force before being named Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Submarine Warfare in 1981. There, he oversaw a massive buildup of the Navy's submarine fleet.
5 years later, I left the Pentagon. We were building 5 nuclear attack submarines and 1 fleet ballistic missile submarine every year. It was a tremendous buildup. And really sponsored by President Reagan and John Lehman, and of course Jim Watkins. Admiral Watkins was a submariner, and this is really what put the pressure on the Soviets, that this force was an unstoppable force. And of course, when the threat came for the strategic, the SDI program, when that came and the Soviets saw that and they saw the tremendous buildup, they realized that we were in the driver's seat. And of course, in my view, that was key to breaking the back of the Soviet Union.
Thunman's office became involved in the discovery of the Titanic when undersea explorer Robert Ballard was contracted to collect new images of the submarines Thresher and Scorpion that were lost in the 1960s. Ballard pressed Thunman for permission to search for Titanic once he completed the job, and eventually won his approval.
My aide came in and said, "Bob Ballard's on the phone." So I got on the phone with him, and he said, "Admiral, I can't tell you very much because this is not a covered phone." He said, "But I want you to know we found it." And hung up, and I thought, my God, we found the Titanic.
Vice Admiral Thunman also oversaw the development of the Navy's Seawolf class of nuclear attack submarines.
Today's combat commanders, used to be called SINCs, say that they wish we had built more because this would have been the ship as we envisioned, the ship of the 21st century. You can build a cruiser and you get a cruiser, good cruiser. You build a submarine and you build a Navy.
In the 1950s, I was serving on a diesel-electric submarine. And I got orders back to Washington to be interviewed by Admiral Rickover, the father of the nuclear navy. I worked for Admiral Rickover directly and indirectly for the rest of my Navy career. He was a real patriot, a great man, a little tough to deal with, but he contributed so much to our country. He built about 150 nuclear submarines. He built about a dozen nuclear aircraft carriers. And this strategic deterrent force played the major role in the winning of the Cold War. Or at least that's my judgment. Thank you again for this recognition. God bless Illinois. God bless America. Thank you.
As a schoolboy, Robert J. Miller, a sixth-generation Illinoisan, wrote a poem praising the soldiers who fought in World War II. He was proud of our nation's heroes. One of his earliest ancestors had fought in the Revolutionary War. Each generation added a new chapter to his family's heritage of service to the nation, but never more so than on a cold winter morning in a valley half a world away in a place called Afghanistan. First, it was just a single insurgent jumping out from behind a boulder. Then the whole valley seemed to explode, with gunfire raining down from every direction. Rob made a decision. He called for his men to fall back. And then he did something extraordinary. Rob moved in the other direction, toward the enemy, drawing their guns away from his team and bringing the fire of all of those insurgents down upon himself, saving the lives of 7 members of his own team and 15 Afghan National Army soldiers to receive the Order of Lincoln posthumously. From Wheaton, Illinois, Staff Sergeant Robert J. Miller.
He started walking when he was only 7 months old. Was just constantly climbing on things, getting into things, constant motion. Typical boy and then some.
Friends say Miller displayed leadership abilities far beyond his years as co-captain of the Wheaton High School gymnastics team.
Hands down, his leadership ability was bar none. It was something you don't see at that age group, at that age level. As a sophomore, junior, and into a senior year, it just got better and better.
Miller enlisted in the U.S. Army as a Special Forces trainee in 2003, where he became one of the youngest members of the fabled Green Berets.
I always reflect back to my first meeting. I counsel everybody that comes to the team, and just our first meetings and the things he said were just, he was born to do what he was doing with us.
Twice decorated for courage under fire during his first deployment to Afghanistan, Miller returned for a second tour in October 2007. In the pre-dawn darkness of January 25, 2008, Staff Sergeant Miller led a patrol of Afghan National Security Forces and U.S. Special Forces soldiers during a combat reconnaissance mission in Kunar Province near the border with Pakistan. They were attacked and greatly outnumbered by insurgent forces. Miller's commander, then Captain Robert Cusick, was severely wounded.
At some point, once I knew we were overwhelmed, and I believe it was right before I had gotten shot, I told the team we need to bound back so we can continue to engage the enemy. And what Robbie had done was bound forward. And to this day, we'll never know why Robbie decided to move forward
when we gave the order to bound back, but I think it was because he knew the consequences had he not bound it forward, or the world of hurt that our team would have been in.
With total disregard for his own safety, Sergeant Miller called for his men to quickly move back to covered positions as he charged the enemy over exposed ground and under overwhelming enemy fire in order to provide protective fire for his team. While maneuvering to engage the enemy, Staff Sergeant Miller was shot in his upper torso. Ignoring the wound, he continued to push the fight, moving to draw fire from over 100 enemy fighters upon himself. He then again charged forward through an open area in order to allow his teammates to safely reach cover. After killing at least 10 insurgents, wounding dozens more, and repeatedly exposing himself to withering enemy fire while moving from position to position, Staff Sergeant Miller was mortally wounded by enemy fire. He was 24 years old.
He stayed up front, allowed the enemy to take the fight to him, and by doing that, the medevac could land to get me off the battlefield.
Immediately, I know he saved at least 4 Americans, and I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 Afghanis that were up there with him at the time. If it wasn't for his action, many of those probably wouldn't have made it back.
On October 6, 2010, Staff Sergeant Robert J. Miller was posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor by President Barack Obama.
It has been said that courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point. For Rob Miller, the testing point came nearly 3 years ago, deep in a snowy Afghan valley. But the courage he displayed that day reflects every virtue that defined his life.
In words attributed to George Orwell, we sleep safe in our beds because rough men stand ready in the night to visit violence on those who would do us harm. Rob's calling in life was to be one of those rough men standing ready in the night. He was so proud to wear the Green Beret of the United States Special Forces and to serve alongside some of the finest warriors our nation has produced. Rob fought well and died honorably, and I don't think there is anything more than that he would want people to say about his military service. My family is so proud of all he accomplished, and we thank the people of Illinois and the Lincoln Academy for remembering and honoring our son and brother. And I also want to thank Governor Quinn, who has shown so much regard and concern not only for our military, but most especially for Gold Star families. And once again, I thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Lincoln Academy, a distinguished American, the 41st Governor of the State of Illinois, the Honorable Pat Quinn.
Each of our laureates tonight have devoted their lives in different ways to service. Service to others is the rent we pay for our place on God's earth. And each of the laureates has more than paid their rent in service to all of us and to our United States of America. I want to thank Gene Driscoll and Jim Farrell and James Lovell and Naomi Burgos, Lynn, William Schnirring, and Ron Thuman, and especially Robert Miller for their service to Illinois and to our country. And we're profoundly grateful to them, each and every one of them, for their lives of service. And in particular, we just heard from the mother, a Gold Star mother, of a real American hero. I think it's important for all of us to understand what Lincoln said at Gettysburg, that those who have died for our democracy did not die in vain. It's our duty, the living, to remember their sacrifice and to carry on the spirit of democracy that they lived and died for. Our church, several weeks ago, sang a song that we all know well, America the Beautiful. However, we did not sing the first verse. We sang the third verse. of America the Beautiful. And to me, that third verse of America the Beautiful sums up the life of Staff Sergeant Miller, and indeed all the lives of those gathered here today. And it says, "O beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life." That's what we all, I think, say together tonight on behalf of the people of Illinois. We thank Staff Sergeant Miller for his purposeful life. We thank each of our laureates who are here tonight for their purposeful lives. We thank them because they put their country ahead of self and mercy more than life. Thank you very much.
Learn more about the Lincoln Academy online at thelincolnacademyofillinois.org.